أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to Shab-e-Jumah program. Inshallah, we'll start our program with the recitation of Hadith Qisa, followed by Dua Kumail, and inshallah the speech and Ziyarat Ibaris. For Hadith Qisa, I would request Brother Ghulam Haider to go ahead and start the program.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال لي يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك فدخل معهما تحت الكساء فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله فقلت وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله، وأتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ فقال له وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء، ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء، فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ بي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عاداهم ومحب لمن أحبهم، إنهم مني وأنا منهم. فاجعل صلاتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا منحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا رب ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل يا رب أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا منحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله، فإنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لأمين إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: يا علي، والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا، وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على
صل
محمد وآل
على
محمد
محمد.
جل فرجهم.
بسم الله بدعاكم عليه. هذا بعد بسم الله دعاكم عليه.
جي مشكلكم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء، وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء، وخضع لها كل شيء، وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعزمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العسام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك، وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني، وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت طاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعزم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عزم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وزهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرعت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فاضح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عزم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالحكومة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد مثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي، يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد ما انطوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك، هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته أو تبعد من أدنيته أو تشرد من آويته أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لأزمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثوه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته، فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب والشدة أم لطول البلاء ومدتي، فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع دائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهب لي يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي، صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك، أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك، فعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفتي وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يهرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزل، أو إحسان تفضل، أو بر تنشر، أو رزق تبسط، أو ذنب تغفر، أو خطأ تستر. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب. يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك الرزق، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وخفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب. أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك، وأن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا، وبخدمتك موصولا، وأعمالي عندك مقبولا، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها بردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب. قوي على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارده، ومن كادني فكده، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة من، وأخسهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجدلي بجودك، وعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأكلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا رب نسبت وجهي، وإليك يا رب مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي، وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
سنتم. Jazakumullah khair. Before I start, let's remember those who are in need of dua and those who are suffering, struggling, going through difficult time, especially during this pandemic. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring them out of their difficulties. Let's recite this dua from Surah Namal together 5 times. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء 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 ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض إله مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون صدق الله العلي العظيم. Also, let's recite Surah Fatiha for all of those people who are no longer with us. I received the news of someone from our community passing away just recently. If the news is correct, Marhum Imam Hussain, as well as all of the other marhumin who we have lost in recent past. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them Jannah, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate their status. Please recite Surah Fatiha for them. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen ar-Rahman ar-Rahim Maliki yawmiddin Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in ihdinas siratal mustaqim siratal ladzina an'amta alayhim غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. The verse that I chose for tonight's discussion on this Shab-e-Jumah is from Surah Hashr, which is the 59th chapter of the Holy Quran. It's ayat number 21, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is posing a question for us to ponder over and contemplate and think about. As many such questions that arise in Quran that are there, the purpose behind these questions is not that the person who's delivering this message is unaware of them. The purpose behind these questions and asking these questions is that they're well aware of it. It's just that they want to awaken those who are in slumber, those who are in deep sleep, so that they be awakened. And such is this ayat, which begins with Law anzalna. Now, the translation of this Law anzalna is sort of conditional. So it begins like, had we sent down. Law anzalna hadha al-Quran ala jabalan. Had we sent this Quran onto the mountain. Now, of course, the concept of sending this Quran onto a mountain itself is very ambiguous. So what does that mean? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that if this Quran was sent down on a mountain, of course, we understand that mountain is an inanimate object. It is a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But of course, it's an inanimate object. And why would it make sense to reveal a book on a mountain, which of course does not possess the ability to read, the ability to think? But of course, we believe that everything is doing the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that itself is a hypothetical question, that had we sent down this Quran on a mountain, upon a mountain, you would have surely seen. Now this is where the prophecy is based on the ilm and the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we had done this and had the mountain possessed the ability to think and ponder, this is what would have happened to the mountain. And I'll read the translation. Had we sent down this Quran upon a mountain, you would have surely seen it humbled and go to pieces with the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We draw such comparisons for mankind so that they may reflect. Indeed, what more could Allah put in this ayat for us to, how straightforward is this ayah where Allah is saying, so that you may reflect. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, so that you may contemplate, so that you might think about what is being said over here. First of all, it questions your minds as to why such an event would even take place. Now, hypothetically, if that was to happen, which we don't know, how it would play out and what would be the consequences of such a phenomenon. So if the mountain had mind and consciousness, it would have perished. If it possessed a sound mind and mindset and ability to think, then it would have definitely perished had we revealed this Quran onto it. Therefore, some people, like the unbelievers, the kuffar, the disbelievers, their hearts are much more rigid and stiff than the mountains are. So mountains are very stiff. As Quran mentions about the mountains, the attributes and the features of mountains is that they keep the earth from violently shaking. They're sort of like autad, which are, serving as those panels which keep the earth from shaking violently. If they weren't there, earth still shakes, but because of the wujud of these mountains, it doesn't shake as badly. So that's the purpose of these mountains. So it says that, they're very stiff, they're very hard, and that's why you can't imagine moving it. So he said, well, some people, like the unbelievers, their hearts are much more rigid and stiff than mountains even. And that's why they don't take any heed from this book. But those who are sahib iman, those who are people considered in Quran as ulul albab, they ponder over this book. They consider this book to be the hikmat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they utilize it properly. So Prophet at another place has said, virtue of Quran upon the texts is like the virtue of Allah upon its creations. Now it's very difficult to explain this hadith, but just the comparison which is being drawn to highlight the importance of this book. What is the virtue of Allah upon its creation? He's our Khaliq. He's the one who created us. He's the one who provides for us. Now, Quran is being compared in the similar fashion. The virtue of this Quran upon other texts that exist is similar to how the virtue of Allah is upon its creation. In other words, same virtue that Allah has in relation to us human beings is the virtue in comparison to Quran as far as the other texts are concerned. Therefore, reciting this book also has values, virtues that are associated with it, which are extraordinary. Sometimes you read these riwayat and you hear these words in reference to Quran, and you think about it and you say, well, how much is this book? We take it for granted and we underutilize the book. And so that, it is only used on those occasions where, okay, that's fine using it. For example, when someone dies. But as far as this book is concerned and the virtues of reciting it is concerned, it tells us that it should be your code of conduct. It should be your daily reading material, which unfortunately is not the case. So in khutbah number 193 from Nahj al-Balagha, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi, when emphasizing on the attributes of those who are the pious, he says, Ta'lina li'ajza al-Quran yurattilunaha tartila. Reading portions of the Quran, reciting it in a well-measured way. That's also important. They're not just recite it, but recite it in a well-measured way. Learn how to read it. This is probably like the last or the least of our importance. We make an effort, excuse me, when our kids are growing up, we make an effort and we give them and we provide them this means so that they learn this Quran and recite it beautifully. But because of lack of consistency, then they lose their way and they're unable to recite it once they finish the Quran. 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, father or mother will come and say, Maulana, I want to teach my kids Quran again. I thought they finished when they were 10 years old, when they were 11 years old, when they were 12. Yes, they finished the Quran, alhamdulillah, once. But then the moment they finished the Quran, they closed this book and they put it away and they never touched it again. And of course, when you don't touch it again, now what will happen? You'll lose focus of this book. You'll lose touch with this book. And beginning when we're teaching this to our kids, when madaris or even Sunday schools, we're teaching this to our kids, we're only teaching them how to read. Very rarely do you see that emphasis is placed upon pondering over the ayat, which could sometimes be overwhelming for the kids of that age. So it is important that we pay much attention, as Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying this over here. And so there's a concept of hifz Quran, memorization of this Quran. Unfortunately, in our madhab, since not many people went towards memorization of Quran, and a lot of negativity surrounded those people who were hufaz of Quran, yet they committed evil acts. There's a mention of those who were in the Sipah against Imam Hussain, standing up to fight Imam Hussain. Amongst them were hufaz, for example. So it is possible. They may have memorized the Quran, but they may not have understood a word from this Quran. So don't decline or deny something altogether if it's associated with a group of people who are negative toward it. Similarly, you would stop praying if that was the case, because people in the army of Yazid, they used to pray as well. Does that mean prayer becomes something bad as well because it's part of their actions? Those who stood up against Imam Hussain, those who were in the army against Amir al-Mu'mineen in the battle of Siffin, in the battle of Jamal, in the battle of Nahrawan, they were reciters of Quran. They were huffaz. There were many those who were hafiz of Quran. They had memorized the Quran by heart, and they were leaders of their congregations. So right away, do you associate negativity toward their action because of what they did against Amir al-Mu'mineen or what they did against Imam Hussain? That's not a good qiyas. That is not a good way of comparing it. No, these are the commandments before anyone can do any of these things. But they did not reflect on this book. The moment they did not reflect on this book, or the moment this salah did not have a positive impact on them, that means it's not the fault with salat or this Quran. Rather, it was the individual person who committed these crimes, and we cannot go ahead and associate two things. So therefore, there's this negativity that is associated with it, where people don't refrain from memorizing it, because a lot of people from the other sects of Islam, they focus entirely on memorization. So we tend to look at memorizing Quran as something which is not desired, for example, when we especially compare it and put along with ayat which say, well, memorize Quran along with pondering over it, or pondering over and contemplating and doing tafakkur fil Quran is better than memorizing, for example. True, no doubt about that. But we can't go ahead and negate one action, because the riwayat that we have from Imam Ma'asum, from Ma'asumin alayhi salatu wasalam in this reference are just phenomenal. Prophet said that I'm leaving behind two weighty things, one of which is Quran, not as another book, between these covers, bound between covers, rather full of guidance. So just don't memorize or read it. You know, what do? We just read it, but understand it as well. We thought memorizing is unwanted altogether. And that is a wrong notion, and I wanted to especially emphasize on that. And these few riwayat that I will quote for you from our books will highlight the importance of memorizing. Yes, memorization with, of course, putting it into practice and the application of this book. For example, this riwayat from the Holy Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam, who said, "Adadu darajil jannati adadu ayil Quran. فإذا دخل صاحب القرآن الجنة قيل له اقرأ وارقى لكل آية درجة فلا تكون فوق حافظ القرآن درجة." It says, Prophet, the noble Prophet said, the number of ranks in paradise is in the number of verses in Quran. So for example, if you believe that there are 6,000 plus ayat in Quran, there are 6,000 plus ranks that exist in paradise. When a person enters the paradise, he will be asked to recite Quran. As he recites Quran, he's told to go higher. For every verse, there is a higher rank which is given to this person, and then there is no higher rank than those who have recited the entire Quran. So if someone goes ahead and recites the entire Quran, when they're asked, every ayat gives you a higher rank, then of course the highest of the rank will be in this person's hand. Sixth Imam Jafar as-Sadiq says, "Al-Hafizu lil-Qur'ani al-Amilu bihi ma'as-Safaratil Kiramil Barara." That Hafiz of Quran are the ones who act, or Huffaz of Quran are the ones who act upon it as well, along with this memorization. So that concept is there. It's not just blindly because anyone can memorize Quran then. Even certain animals who have the ability to speak human language, you can teach them the ayat of Quran and they'll be able to recite. I'm sure you've seen some videos circulating about that as well. Some parrots, some other animals that are able to imitate human language, or someone who doesn't speak the language at all. It's easy to memorize. Many non-Muslims have memorized many ayat and the surahs of Quran, but to what benefit? Yes, it might benefit them to the extent that they have recited it. But they will be in the company of the most noble angels who memorize along with what? Acting upon it. Al-Amil. That's what Imam said. Al-Hafizu lil-Qur'ani al-amilu bihi. The one who memorizes this Quran along with doing what? Acting upon it. Ma'as Safara. This person is within the company of the most noble angels. So tilawat of Quran and the virtues that are mentioned, the rewards for everything that Allah subhanahu. That's why I say this often. I repeat this, that man sabaqat rahmatuhu ghadaba. Allah is someone whose rahmat exceeds his ghazab. That how much ease He has provided for us. Every step of the way that He has given us so much ease to do things. The path is so easy for us. Just reciting an ayat of Quran, the darajat that are given by it. Prophet at another place, he says, وَلَتَالِ آيَةٍ مِنْ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ مِنْ تَحْتِ الْأَرْشِ إِلَى تُخُومِ السُّفْلَى. In fact, this is a very lengthy hadith, so I'm just sharing parts of it. He says, reward for the reciter of Quran is better than that exists between skies and earth. In other words, nothing in this world would be worthy or could be worthy of the reward of the one who's the reciter of this Quran. Here we thought that recitation or memorization was something which Shia madhab did not believe in. No, that's wrong. That's the notion that is associated with us. And alhamdulillah, after the inqilab of Iran, there was this emphasis on creating hufaz. So it takes a nation to do this. It takes an entire community to work on it collectively to produce these things. So there was this influx and there was this importance behind memorizing, because it was taught that, look, Shias, they don't memorize Quran. There are no hafiz of Quran in Shia madhab. To prove that wrong, in the last 40 years, so many hufaz have been produced from Iran and other Shia majority places following the lead of Iran. As young as 6-year-olds have memorized the entire Quran. So that is itself is a miracle. And then, of course, the consequences and, of course, the good, things that are coming out of it, what they receive in return is just enormous. He says, يُدْفَعُ عَنْ تَالِ الْقُرْآنِ بَلْ وَالْآخِرَةِ. The wrath of the hereafter and being tangled with it is repelled from the one person who is the reciter of this Quran. So not just reciting, but also listening to the Quran. Sometimes people may not have the ability to participate in reciting. Although whenever this opportunity arises, don't remain back. Don't say, well, my recitation is not that good and poor reading skills, so I'll refrain from reciting. No, recite as much as you can, but benefit from listening to it as well. Because in the same hadith, which continues, it's a lengthy hadith, Prophet said, وَالْمُسْتَمِعُ آيَةً مِنْ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ مِنْ طَبِيرٍ ذَهَبًا. So the one who listens to the verses of Quran is better than being rewarded with a mountain made of gold. Yes, mountain made of gold. That's superior. Recitation of Quran and reciting it, listening to it, is beyond than being given a mountain made of gold. Because if you want to, in aradtum aisha as-su'ada wa mawt ash-shuhada wa najat yawm al-hasra, if you intend, if you want, if you desire a prosperous life, a death of a martyr, and salvation on the day when people will be, giving hasrat, or the day which is called Yawm al-Hasrat, they will be regretting what they have done. وَالظَّلَلُ الْيَوْمَ الْحُرُورِ, and they want shade on the day when it'll be the day of Qiyamah. He says, فَدْرُسُ الْقُرْآنِ فَإِنَّهُ كَلَامُ الرَّحْمَنِ وَحِرْزٌ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ وَرُجْحَانٌ فِي الْمِيزَانِ. He said, then فَدْرُسُ الْقُرْآنِ, then learn Quran. Ask someone to teach you this Quran. فَدْرُسُ, learn it like a subject. فَدْرُسُ الْقُرْآنِ, like you attend different durus, attend the dars of Quran as well. فَإِنَّهُ كَلَامُ الرَّحْمَنِ. Why? Because it is the kalam of the one who's all merciful, the one who's Rahman. وَحِرْزٌ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ, It serves as that shield, that hirz. Remember those who we put these hirz Imam Jawad or hibz Imam Rada, this hirz that you keep with you for protection. So this Quran, if you memorize it, if you read it, if you understand it, you ponder and think about it, then it serves as hirzun min ash-shaytan wa rujhanun fil mizan, and it will also make the weight of your scale heavier on the day of judgment. So many examples. These examples, of course, are for people like you and I, who are drowned in the worldly affairs and in materialism. Hence, Imams compare worldly things with the acts of goodness. So these examples of a mountain full of gold and other things that is given just so that you and I, who are into materialism so much, we can compare that this materialism that we are after, there's nothing, or how much that which we consider to be something enormous in our eyes, such as mountain full of gold, when it's compared to spirituality, it is equal to reciting Quran or one ayat of Quran. That's the comparison that is being given between the two. So the problem arises when we're unable to do a recommended action and then compared with something else, which we already do. For example, a person who does a lot of charity might say, well, I help out a lot of people. I helped a lot of others, which is much better than in comparison with reading or listening to the Quran. So I may not know how to read, and I don't really listen to Quran. I listen to, for example, something else, but I don't listen to Quran, nor do I read, but I've done so much charity. So, and I've heard that charity is better than this. Yes, you're right. You're comparing, and this comparison is false. And this is why we, a lot of time, as I said, we start comparing the recommended actions with something else. Both of them has its values, but you can't say, well, because I don't do this and I do this, right away that thing is lower or this thing is superior. No. Person who does not have charity, who's unable to give, for example, that is something which is not for everyone. Not everyone is capable of giving charity. Even when those who possess wealth and are financially sound, tawfiq is not there, they're unable to give, let alone those who don't have anything to give. Then, of course, it is a mismatch, right? Allah did not give me anything. How can I go ahead and help others? So only few are able to do that. But this is an ability which everyone can benefit from, which is reading or listening to Quran. Teaching Quran also, if you learned it, then don't keep this knowledge with you. Try and pass this knowledge. When he compares mal with ilm, one of the comparisons is what? That when you spend wealth, it decreases. When you spend ilm, it increases. You protect your wealth, but ilm protects you. Knowledge protects you. And so we read the ayat which says, Kunu ibadan li min dunillahi, walakin kunu rabbaniyina bima kuntum tuallimun al-kitab wa bima kuntum tadrusun. He says God would never give the book, authority, or prophecy to anyone who would tell others to be his servants instead of being the servants of God. He would rather tell them to worship God, for they've been teaching and studying the book. The Holy Prophet, he walks into the mosque and he sees that there's a group of people who's praying, doing the ibadat, because that's one of the places of worship is for to do ibadat. And then on another corner, he sees people are reading Quran or talking about ilm, or something is being taught or being learned. Prophet goes and sits with those who are discussing and sharing knowledge. He said both of them are on khair, but this is afdal and this is superior. So this verse highlights that recitation of Quran has a means to bring us close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even when you don't understand it, it's going to bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aside from it being, of course, the source for the recognition of many other things. This book is not just an ordinary book. It has so many secrets that are hidden in it that we haven't been able to figure out, that we haven't been able to, extract. There's so many hidden secrets that are still in this Quran. that are still need to be discovered. What happens is that science and scientists go ahead and make a discovery, and then we relate that discovery to the ayat of Quran. So, oh, look, Quran had already predicted this 14 centuries ago, and then we feel proud about it. Of course, it predicted it 14 centuries ago, but you should have already gone ahead and discovered that based on the fact that this book is with you. So there's so much emphasis that is laid upon as far as teaching this book is concerned. Prophet said, best among you are those the ones who learn Quran and then teach it to others. Not just keep it to themselves, but actually they go ahead and they teach others this book as well. There's also method of reciting, mode of reciting this Quran, the kayfiyat of reciting this Quran, that it should be beautified. How Amir al-Mu'mineen said that these people who are muttaqeen, they recite this Quran, وَرَتَّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا, in the complete measured way, the way it should be recited. So I'll skip through some of these intricacies of how to recite Quran, because if we can just get ourselves to recite it, let alone how that part will come inshallah afterwards. So there are some effects of reciting as well. I'll share a few effects before I bring to conclusion. So one of the effects of reciting the Quran is the increment in iman. Of course, when you are listening to majalis and when the fadail of Ahlul Bayt are mentioned, that does what? One of the things that it does, it increases your iman, their faith in them, their belief in them. If, for example, it was getting weakened, or if it needed more reinforcement, so it increases your iman. A lot of time people say, iman taza ho gaya, for example. Quran says the same thing, that when recite the Quran, it increases the iman, and as well as tawakkul and reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Surah Maryam says, إِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُ الرَّحْمَنِ خَرُّوا سُجَّدًا وَبُكِيًّا. Or another place, وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. In the first one, that when the ayat are recited, they would bow down in prostration with tears. See, compare the effects. When the fadail and the masaib of Ahlul Bayt are mentioned in the majlis, or when you read it in a book, it increases your iman like prostrating and going into sajda. And then when the masaib are recited, you weep and you cry, and there's buka in it. So your iman increases, zadathum imana, wa ala Allahi wa ala rabbihim yatawakkalun, and your reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also increases. So you see the comparison between the two. So when these, ayat were revealed, a lot of people mocked the Muslims, that you just heard this ayat. Did it increase your iman? Did it strengthen your iman? So when his revelations are recited to them, their faith strengthens, and in God they increase their trust. So some of the things that happened, the effects of it is the increment of faith, reliance and trust upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being humble and showing humility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by falling into prostration, weeping from the fear of Allah. Those who are against weeping, Quran is saying that one of the effects of reciting Quran is the person weeps. Buka, the word bakiya has appeared in this ayat. So we read many more effects in ahadith. This is just a couple of ayat that are recited, from one from Surah Maryam, and another one I believe is from Surah Anfal, which says Zadathum imana. So we find that so much else is mentioned in the riwayat of Masumin, that house in which Quran is recited, it illuminates like nur is coming out of it. You've seen these different movies that are made on the lives of Masumin. Whenever they show Imam, they show this nur is coming out, nur is satih. Or the house in which, and they made a movie on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from his birth. It begins from his birth or prior to his birth. When his birth takes place, Hazrat Abdul Muttalib, when he was entering the house, he sees that there's this nur that is emerging from the house. He stops at that house, at the door of the house, before he enters into the house. He takes off his shoes and then he walks into the house in which he was frequent. But the moment Rasulullah is born, this is how he enters into the house, because he sees this nur is coming out of the house. So house is illuminated. Blessings are showered in abundance, and the wrath stays away. La yu'adhibu Allahu qalban fihi al-Quran. Allah does not punish the heart in which there's Quran in it. Angels visit such houses. Shayateen stay away from such houses. Dua is accepted in these houses when Quran is recited. So what should we be doing? Should we be reciting Quran, playing Quran in our houses, or should we be playing, na'udzubillah, songs or music? Sometimes it is voluntary, sometimes it is involuntary. Should we be decorating our houses with listening to the music, or blasting the music in our house? Because the effects of Quran recitation in the house is that angels come, shayateen stay away. The adverse effect would be that if something else is played other than Quran, then shayateen gain access and the angels refrain from descending to this house. So Quran was the reason for the grief of these muttaqin. It becomes the reason for their comfort as well. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, وَيَسْتَسِيرُونَ بِهِ دَوَاءَ دَائِهِمْ. They're seeking cure for their ailments through this Quran. Because of course we know Quran is not only providing for our physical needs, but it also provides for what? More importantly, it provides for the spiritual needs as well. So I'll bring it towards the conclusion that we read in the ziyarah. You recite the ziyarah on daily basis, and we say to Imam Hussain, we say, Assalamu alayka ya Sharik al-Quran, amongst the other titles, or rather in reference to Imam Zamana, when we recite his ziyarat, we call him Assalamu alayka ya Sharik al-Quran, Assalamu alayka ya Khalifat al-Rahman, Assalamu alayka ya Madhar al-Iman, for example, and other attributes of Imam Ismail. Amongst those attributes is what? Sharik al-Quran, that he's the Sharik as far as this Quran, he's the partner as far as this Quran is concerned. Imam Hussein's passion for Quran and the reward for the teacher, that he had hired, how he provided for him. Fourth Imam, his words in reference to this Quran, he says, لو مات ما بين المشرق والمغرب لما استوحشت بعد أن يكون القرآن معي. That if everything was to perish between East and West, I will not have one fear, I will not feel terrified for an instance, لما استوحشت بعد أن يكون القرآن معي, when Quran would be with me. So if everything perishes, nothing is there anymore, as long as Quran is with me, I have no fear, none whatsoever. And therefore we find that how Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, when he's after the events of Karbala, when Imam's head is traveling upon the spear, we hear that from atop the spear after the martyrdom, these ayat were being recited. He said, Am hasibta anna ashab al-kahfi wal-raqim kanu min ayatina ajaba. Were the stories of ashab al-kahf, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, do you think that their story is more marvelous than my martyrdom and being taken upon the spear? Which is superior, or which is showing you which is more marvelous, their story or my head being raised on the spear? Not the fact that Imam is reciting with his head on the spear, that itself is a miracle, but Imam is awakening the conscience of the people, that the people of Kahf, that they slept in this cave for 300 plus years, as Quran mentions, because they ran away to secure their religion. I did the same thing. I left city of Medina to secure this religion. And only 50 years, they slept for 309 years. And you think that that is ta'ajjub awar, that is astonishing, that's marvelous? It's been only 50 years since the wafat of the Holy Prophet. and I'm his grandson, and they have slain me in this way, or my story is more marvelous and my story is more astonishing to you. Of course, people were saying, Imam, your story is more marvelous and your martyrdom is more astonishing to us than the story of Ashab-e-Kahf. And that's why whenever our fourth Imam was asked about the most difficult of the times, Imam would say, Asham, Asham, Asham. Because none other place did Imam face, and I'm using these words because these are the words that Masumin have uttered themselves. The humiliation in places such as Kufa and Sham, where not only people are witnessing and watching, but they're using language which is not Shaya Nishan of even ordinary people. They're attacking them with their words. They're striking them with their cunning ways. And that was more damaging to Imam Zainul Abidin. That he's standing helplessly with the women of the household who would never step out of the house, let alone without any veils. Now they have to step out of the house and they're without any veils. They're standing like captives in the chains and in the ropes, and yet people are standing over there and they're cursing at them and they're swearing at them. And that is the reason Imam said, Asham, Asham, Asham. When one of the companions of Imam said, Oh Imam, you are Masoom. How much can someone say to you, Oh Imam, have patience, have sabr. You are Masoom. You know that you should adopt or you should act with sabr. Imam said to the person, you have not done justice to us. Yaqub had lost one of his sons. He wept so much that he lost his eyesight. وَبِيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ. That her eyes became white until Yusuf sent his pirahan, his libas back, that he gained his sight back. Yaqub did. But he cried for losing Yaqub, who was only one of his 12 sons that he had. He lost one of the sons and he was weeping and crying like this. I saw 18 of my family members were butchered and slaughtered in front of my eyes. Allah lanatullah al-qawm al-zalimin. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Oh Allah, please accept our ibadah tonight. Allah, we've committed a lot of sins. Please forgive our sins. Allah, give us a tawfiq and ability to ponder over this book, read this Quran, recite this Quran, understand this Quran, and make Quran to be our daily recitation. Allah, raise us with this Quran in our hearts. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of Sahib this Quran, Sharik al-Quran, Imam Mahdi Ajalullah ta'ala Faraju Sharif, and make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Mutawajjih ziyarat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، وعلى ابن عمك أمير المؤمنين، وعلى ناتك فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، وعلى ولديك الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة، وعلى التسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفة الله، السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله، السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم وخليل الله، السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله، السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله، السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام، السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى، السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره، والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وطاعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. ولعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسراب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من ملهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبيابكم موقن وبشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي. وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليك يا أولياء الله وأحباءه. السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأبداءه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الناصح. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله. بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما. فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوسيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحمطهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. وألحقه الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء. السلام عليك يا مغيث الشيعة والزوار في يوم الجزاء. السلام عليك يا آنس النفوس أيها المدفون بأرض الطوس. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى رضا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الأسر والزمان. الأمان 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 من فتن الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. السلام عليك يا مصدر الإيمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمام زماننا هذا، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وسهورك. السلام عليك ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجك.